to talk about George Washington.
Oh my God. No, thank God I'm back then. Shut up, Dominic. All right.
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
No, you're not. You are not. Christina, why don't you your horror story?
Oh man. I've had a lot of things. I've had actors forget their props on stage and just stall out there because other actors wouldn't go on because they're like, oh, they forgot. And they're like, how are we supposed to get that prop? I'm like, just take it out. I've had like times where everyone's running around like headless chickens backstage, obviously. One time I had accidental nudity on stage.
Those.
It was
so you stage managed the Justin Timberlake Janet Jackson Super Bowl halftime?
Yes, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. I thought I'd let you know now that was actually me. I was about 8 at the time. I didn't know what I was doing.
You did good.
How did accidental
so much
nudity?
now.
Right? It explains everything that happened. It's like, who let this child? That's what I say to myself. I'm like, who let this child stage manage? 24, you're like 25 years old. It's like, child. But I've had times where I've had to like hide behind like set pieces on stage, trying to keep everything open and being stuck there, almost being seen by the audience because things just broke randomly. What else has happened? I know
Go back. How did the accidental nudity happen?
Oh,
He doesn't give a shit about anything else.
Priorities. Go back to the nudity.
So it was it required nudity, obviously. Like this did not require to be seen. But okay. It happened because the curtain that was supposed to be pulled to cover it got pulled too much to the side that the actress who was behind it getting her set piece in front of her, like her breasts, and it just went so far to the side that there she was in all of her glory that I just hear my board ops all lose their minds. I'm backstage with my ASM and like my other like actress, and we're just kind of like, what is happening right now? As we're running on stage trying to stop it. And it was right before intermission, so thankfully we had 15 minutes to cool down. But yeah, it was a time. I just remember my board op being like, I don't want to go through this again, Christina. Why did this happen? I was like, it's live theater, Jackson. What can I say?
It's true.
I've done a couple shows where women have like fallen out of costume pieces. It's usually musicals, like they'll fall out during the dance.
Oh yeah, because that makes sense. Right? Oh my God. Again? Am I gone?
No, you're there.
No, you're
Define gone, Greg.
Well, it's really strange because
I think he's going to be gone shortly.
I don't see any of you. So continue talking. I'm not.
Megan, what about you? What's your story?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I don't think I've had anything where anyone has ended up horribly injured to the effect of Kara's.
I mean, I've been injured, but that was it.
Yeah, like I'm just walking wounded. I'm fine, guys. Just keep going. The first thing that pops into my mind for me, and it was just probably in the grand scheme of things, it was probably fine. But for me, I did not like how powerless I felt. And it was actually one of Greg's shows. It was Taming of the Shrew. I was the stage manager, and we had also thrown me in as the widow.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Just in at the very end, like at the very end of Act 1, at the very end of Act 2.
By one of the actors.
Yeah. So, and it worked out fine because it didn't conflict with anything else I was doing. I just merely stage managed in a corset and a bustle like you do.
That's how I used to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Used to.
I followed Greg's example, clearly.
The ravages of time.
Yeah. But there was one weekend where came home the Friday night after the show going, I don't feel 100% great, but I just have to make it through the weekend. I can do this. And then I got up the next day for the Saturday and was like, I'm going to take it easy. I'm doing the rest thing, and then I'll go to the show and we'll be good. And then there was around like 2 in the afternoon, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then I pretty much nearly passed out in my bathroom, and I went, okay, I can't go on. I can't go to the Playhouse. We have to go to plan B, where I can't be there for my own show.
Oh, wow.
This does not make me feel good. And we managed. We found someone to stand in as an actor for the widow. My board op, who was thankfully like my best friend, who I wrangled into being a board op in the first place because she loves me. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna need your help making stuff work backstage. The rest of the cast kind of picked up the slack where I was helping with like set changes and stuff, and they just kind of worked through it in the afternoon and went through the show. That, and I hated that feeling of like, this is the worst case scenario for me.
Megan, don't you love it when a cast does that? I know I've had a show where one cast member broke something and everybody else had to pitch in a cover, and they just do it. It's just, what do you need and what do you need done, and we'll do it. And isn't that an awesome feeling?
It's like the high and the low, because it like I hated being like, I feel like I've let everybody down, like, in that like I have the one job, well technically two, but I have the one job and I'm not here. But the fact that like they were able to be like, all right, we're going to roll with it. We're going to make it work and it will be okay. And like that, yes, it was
It means
really great.
that you did your real job the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Adrian,
had that on,
do you have a horror story?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go with 3. One's kind of short. So it was my first show on the ship that I was doing like on my own. So the current floor technician was like shadowing me. And so there's this thing called a show stop, where if the ship is too rocky or there's technical issues or anything like that during the middle of the show, you can do a show stop. It has to be less than 3 minutes to continue doing the show. But if it's over 3 minutes, then you tell the audience, like, you guys got to go, like, we're not finishing the show. And so this show was called Heart of Soul, and there's only one spot that we can do the show stop and then keep going. Every other time we would have to stop the show just because of the way the music lines up. And so the ship like completely lifts like to the side, and the all 4 girls who are on stage, like on block, sitting, and they like lift their legs up and lean back, happen to go at the exact same time that the ship lifts. And like they all slide off their blocks. And so we immediately like call a show stop and like close the curtains, because they're all like on the floor and their blocks are on the side. And we're like, what do we do? And it was my first show like on my own. It was terrifying. So like that was just scary because like I was there for a week and I thought the ship was gonna like go over and we were gonna be the Titanic. So that was just scary for me.
It's very seldom the theater actually tips over, so it's
exactly.
totally
So,
different
you know,
situation.
it'll be fine. And then the next one was, so it was our invited dress and our set pieces weren't done yet. So it was for Xanadu, and we had these rotating walls that would rotate to backstage, and then we would put like a different cover on it, and then it would rotate back and it would create a new scene. There was like 5 walls. They were super big. They were like 18 feet tall by like 4 feet wide. Like they were huge. And they just weren't done. And I didn't know they weren't done. So like they weren't painted. And so I called this like swap for the walls to turn around, and they were like, oh, they're not done. And I was like, okay, thinking that they're just like not done putting them on, because we had to have tech people put them on. And they were like, oh, they're not done. And I was like, okay, great. How much longer? And they were like, I don't know. They're not painted yet. And I'm sitting in the booth calling a show, not having been told that they completely weren't done. Wow. So I was like, okay, well, turn the walls and it'll just be empty for our invited dress. So that was just terrifying to hear. And it was like a fast transition too, because like the walls had to turn and then actors had to get on and then the lights had to come up. So we're sitting there in darkness waiting for the walls to turn. And then I look like I messed up because like I didn't call it right. Nobody realized it except for like our technical director. And then he comes up to me afterwards and he goes, sorry, forgot to tell you that I didn't finish painting the walls. I was like, you think?
That's a little thing. That's a
right? And then the last one was about an ASM who no call, no showed to our first tech rehearsal. And I was like, I don't know where she is. And then like the next day, still no call, no show. Next day, I find out she was in the hospital. okay,
Oh, okay, not
like a huge deal, but like something I would have known. So we're on day 3. Our invited dress is the next day. There's no way we can work her into doing anything backstage at this point because we've gotten everything else covered. So we're like, so you can come. And she was like, no, that's probably not a good idea because I've been in the hospital. But like, I can come and just sit. I can't do anything, but I can sit. So we had to fire the ASM on invited dress because there was no way for her to come and do anything because it was invited dress at that point.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
We haven't heard from Brian yet, Greg.
Yeah, Brian.
Probably the worst show I ever had an experience with was while I was up in Sacramento. The show was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. We actually pushed opening. Actors didn't know lines. Even with pushing opening back a week, the scenic designer still didn't finish building everything by that extension for us. And then they skipped payment on everyone.
Oh,
So,
nice.
needless to say, that was not an enjoyable experience. They definitely have since then closed their doors shortly after that performance. I was actually so embarrassed of that show, I asked them to reprint the programs and take my name off of it.
Oh, wow.
Because it was such a train wreck that there was nothing I could have done to get it where it needed to be. But yeah, it's the only time that I've ever been that embarrassed of a show that I've requested my name be taken off of it. I mean, with everybody else, I've had, the missing props and entrances and other set pieces not being finished. But at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy, is because that's what keeps me on my toes. Because if it was the same every night and nothing happening, I would get complacent in the show and not be paying as much attention as I should. So, not that I want anything to happen, but I enjoy it kind of when they do because it keeps me on my toes.
Sure.
You have something to talk about, like now.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say,
So
when Greg calls you and says, you want to do this, now you have something to talk about.
it's true. Megan's first question was, is it just me? So,
And then honestly, like I'd rather have something bad happen on stage than outside externally in the lives of actors, because I've had something really, really bad happen. And luckily it was after the show closed. But just some things are just unavoidable and surprising.
So here's a question for all of you. It kind of goes back to something Dominic was talking about earlier. You are the conduit. I absolutely agree. A good stage manager is in touch with everyone. In the line of your biggest catastrophes and disasters, who have you, in general, had more problems with, actors or directors?
Actors.
Yeah.
Actors,
I mean,
definitely.
yeah, both are probably leaning toward actors.
Wow.
Well, I mean, statistically, you have more actors than directors.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
I did
true.
a show.
That's true.
I did a show with 15 kids, ranges 8 to 12. Like, let's count the problems.
We love children's theater.
Oh yeah, children
Oh,
are
yeah.
great. Yeah.
So let me rephrase. Then. You're absolutely right. Have you had problems with directors, and no names need to be mentioned, but that you walked away at the end and said, that director is off my list?
Yes.
Yes.
How many? Is that a rare thing, or?
Yeah, I don't really say-
And
It's
what's
pretty
the
rare.
problem? What is the problem at that point? Because that's an interesting thing. It's not just, gosh, they didn't direct the show well. I'm sure it's, what is it that caused that decision?
I think the biggest thing is just kind of attitude and presence. I think Phyllis, you and I can directly relate to a director that I don't even remember his name, but
Unfortunately, I do.
Oh wait, I do know his name. He was horrible. He treated the actors like crap. He treated his choreographer, who was also his girlfriend or a significant other or something, like crap. He was also the lead, and he treated his actors as the lead like crap. So it was just one of those things of you just wanted to get away from the show as fast as possible, but at the same time, it was a great show. You know, just what was put together with what we had. But I think it all boils down to attitude. If you're not in it to win, and if you're not a team player, you know, and all those things, it just doesn't work. You know, like I don't know how many of you guys have done multiple shows with Greg. I'm sure it's been a few, and it's because you always want to go back to the good directors.
Brian's
I was
done
going
a
to
couple
tag
of
on to
partial
that, Greg.
shows.
Greg, if I can tag on to that. Obviously, neither one of us worked with him again, but don't you, when you're asked to do a show, and when I was asked, I would always say no. And then I'd say, well, who's directing it? And they would tell me, and I would say, oh, I want to work with him or her. So yeah, I don't want to SM, but yeah, I really want to work with them. So, okay. So don't you select your show in accordance to who's directing it? Can I tag on to that, Greg?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say, with the director that I won't work with again, he was just awful. He was the kind of like take credit for the designer and assistant director's ideas. One of the designers was like, we have to, because it was a musical, well, we have to get the mics in so the actors can practice. His exact words were "fuck the actors." So it's like, you know, I really don't want to work with this person again, because he was one of those directors where like the tech people in the booth, like he never even spoke to us, which was fine because he was just such a dick to everybody around us. But it's like but I mean, the thing is, like, you're sitting there watching him act like this, and you're just like, I never want to work with you if this is how you treat people.
That's a mess. What else?
Yeah.
What other kind of things have happened?
I mean, I do have a couple directors that I don't want to work with, and it purely comes down to how they handle actors in various situations and all that. When you're talking down to them and everything is a critique and nothing ever meets an expectation, unfortunately, it put a bad taste in my mouth for working with that director. And I do ask that question when I get a call from someone. Oh, we want you to stage manage this. Great. Who will be directing it? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm already committed.
Oh, I just got busy.
I have to wash my hair every night for the next 4 months.
There are directors that are just a dream to work with, and one of the things that I want from a director is they have the courage to say they don't know something. Because that's one of the things I really hate is when a director tries to tell me how to do my job, but they're wrong. And it's like, you can admit you don't know how to do something, because because those are directors that are so hard to work with when they're like telling me how to cue a show, and I'm sitting there listening to it like, that's not gonna work. And so just the designer, one time the designer just said, just do it the way she said. And it's like, okay. And then it's like, oh, that doesn't look right. It's like, no, it doesn't.
I don't know about everybody else, but I've always felt that the best directors basically have two qualities. They know how to cast a show, and they're collaborative. And those are the flat out the directors that I would do anything to work with again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think being able to admit you don't know something goes back to being collaborative. Like, you hire these people because they know how to do it.
Yeah, good point. Here's a question. Here's a question from Mr. Schiffer. He wants to know, at what point in the process of a show do you know whether the show will be a success or not? I love that.
What a great
My
question.
answer is closing night. No, I'm curious. What do you think, everybody?
Casting.
Really?
Maybe.
You're
Not to
the hardest
jump
one.
not to jump the gun on that answer, but it's like, you know that the stage manager is good, obviously. You know that the director is good because you chose them. But the cast.
I like the way you just said that.
Well, going off with everyone else.
Yes, it's true.
But the cast is really kind of out of your hands a little bit. You know, unless the director leans over and says, "Hey, what do you think about that person?" But I've worked with some casts where, you know, we'll look at that. Like Death Trap was a perfect example. Once you cast everybody, you've lined them all up, and we just kind of stared at them awkwardly for 15 seconds, and then you're like, yeah, this is gonna work. And I'm like, you know what, it is gonna work. And it was fantastic. And then I've also been with other cast members where I'm just like, you guys are a bunch of unruly little children, and this is just not gonna be a fun thing.
Or where you just have people that are just so. I was on a show where someone was so hated, people didn't go to the cast party because he was gonna be there.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I stopped going to cast parties. I didn't want to ruin it for everybody else. So.
Oh no.
Oh.
And well, I'm curious because you say, when do you know it'll be successful? Because I feel like sometimes that's a little subjective, because I have definitely been on a show where, honestly, I really did not like the process in terms of like, I had a lot of issues with dealing with a lot of the different actors. The technical components were a pain in a butt to deal with backstage, and it was just like for me, it felt like a constant stress. Like, I cannot wait for this show to be over. Do I really want to keep doing this after this show? Like, I don't even know. Like, and everyone I knew who, like, I didn't even want to, like, I was like, low-key, like, yeah, I'm working on a show, guys. Don't feel compelled to come. Like, I don't know, honestly, how I feel about people seeing this. But generally, the audiences loved the show, which blew my mind, where I'm like, are we seeing the same show? And
I've
like,
been on that show, yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah, actually, Dominic, I think you do know exactly what I'm talking about. Where I'm like, I mean, I guess that's good, but also if you ask me, it would not be my first choice of like, hit it out of the park, guys. Because if you ask me, was this show going to work? I'm like, define work.
Now here's a question.
Things on stage?
Here's a question for you, Megan. I have no idea what show you're talking about. Please, God, let it not be one of mine. But
it's not.
Did it not work for you because of the feel of the show? Or, I mean, did you recognize the fact that it was a good production that people should like? Or were you surprised by the fact that anyone enjoyed it at all?
You stumped her.
I know.
The show itself conceptually, I think, was interesting. I know it's one of those, okay, I having been able to step back from it, I think I can see why people latched onto it the way they did. I was a little surprised, I think, because at that point, I think I was slightly conditioned by what a lot of the audiences, full disclosure, it was at the Playhouse, where I was like, it's generally where I work, but just like, I kind of was like, I really don't think this is the kind of thing the audiences would go for, but a lot of them actually really like it. So like, that was a pleasant surprise. I think I personally had a hard time believing a lot of it would work, because I felt like behind the scenes, if you could see what was going on backstage, the amount of actor drama and other things that were playing into it, it felt like, I don't see how this is gonna pull off, because I felt like there were so many other things behind the scenes that could make this just fall apart.
Is that the one where you had so much trouble with the designers? Yeah,
I'd like to respond to Eric in a different way. I say opening night is when you know for sure if you're gonna go or not. I've had shows that were so well cast. The read-through was fabulous. All the designs looked awesome. In tech, it was coming together. And then for one or two different reasons, opening night, you realize that everything you thought would be okay, just it wasn't going to be okay. And even through the whole run of the show, it never was okay. Even to the point of a lead not being able to learn the lines, which was through no fault of the leads, because the lead was fantastic and seasoned and awesome, but it just didn't work for them. And so to your answer, Eric, to me, I know opening night if we're going to do it or not. And of all the shows I've done the past 40 years, I'd say that's my tipping point is we've done all this work and it's all this collaboration, and here's the real test, and either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it, and that's when we know. And the audience may not feel it's a success, but the production crew may feel, you know what, this was fabulous. Whether the audience liked it or not, this came together, it was a great show.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. We'll get back to this because I want to, but I don't want to forget this question.
And I apologize. I have to bail for an 8 o'clock Zoom that I'm hosting. I'm going to hang on for another 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. I want to say two things.
Yeah.
I did one show. When talking about success, I did one show where the director ended up having to go in for chemo during the pre-production process, so a lot of ideas were not finalized, and you could like really tell in the final product. But the cast got along great, and we had an awesome time doing it. And so,
and this is my question then. I know as a director how I classify a successful show.
Right.
As a stage manager, and I know how producers classify a successful show. That's easy. As a stage manager, how do you classify a successful show? Adrian.
I think it depends on what kind of stage manager I was. You know, if I was the calling stage manager, if I had successful shows that there's always those sequences that you're going to stress about every single time before you start calling those cues. And you get through those every single night perfectly great. And you feel relief every single night. I think that can be super successful. If you're backstage and you're just like making sure everybody gets on, if you're like show starting on time can be successful. It really, hearing his first question of like what classifies as a successful show, I was like, you know, it can be, you created a great family with this cast and maybe the show didn't sell well. You have a cool family. You have some great new friends. That was success for you. Or maybe, you know, you called your show as you were supposed to. Nothing was super crazy. You had maybe 20 cues through the whole show. Maybe it was just a straight play, like, you know, not a big deal. And then you're like, okay, that was successful. It's done. It's over with. I got a paycheck. That was my success. And, you know, or maybe it did sell super well. And you're like, that was super successful because we had a full audience and like you fed off the audience. So to me, it's going to vary for every single show, for every single cast, for every single theater, you know, every single time. But so,
I do think there are shows like you can feel the magic.
Yes.
And it definitely builds like the magic. Like, you know, I say casting, it's so early, but you know, once the actors get off book and you add lighting and sound and special effects, you know, it builds and builds and builds. And I think there's stages of success that you go through. I mean, I remember Greg, when we were doing Christmas Carol, the lead actor could not get his lines right to save his life. And we had to spend an entire night with me basically being every single character for, and if he got his line wrong, we had to go back. And I think we spent a good 3.5 hours just getting him to learn his lines, but I still knew that the show was going to be a success. Even at that point, when you're just like, what are we going to do? The lead can't remember his lines. So I think it's progressive too.
Yeah, I was gonna say during tech week, if you can feel it building to get better, then it's going to be successful through tech week. Because I mean, there are tech weeks where you can feel it not improving, and there are tech weeks where you can feel it building. And if you can feel it building, then it's going to be successful.
Christina, anything to add there?
I was going to say, yeah, it really does vary from show to show. I was going to say it also is like, depending on where the issues during rehearsal process have been. So say if lines are an issue, you look at it as a success when people start getting their lines down, the cues down, when things come together. I look at where we started and then where we've gotten to finally. And yeah, like I agree with all the small little successes. Like it's successful if like you had a great time with the cast, maybe it didn't sell well, but you really came together and you created something. And even if it wasn't a thing for the masses, which we all know happens with shows, any art really. But if it was something for you and that cast, I look at it as like, that was my success. Even my really horrible shows, I'm like, that was successful for me. Because I was never going to learn if my shows were always easy. I was never going to get better if my shows were always wonderful. Like, and I enjoyed the struggle. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed, though, having that and knowing that with my actors, it was a family. We were just going to do it together. So, yeah.
Cool. Brian, do you have any idea when a success happens for you?
It's a compilation of everything. It's from, when we do that casting initially, when you have the morale of everyone being built up. If everyone's leaving at the end of the night, just like, oh gosh, that was just, I don't want to go back. To me, that's not a successful show. I want to be there so I can help build my cast up. It's kind of like Adrian said, we've created those memories. We have that family. Yes, if we have a sellout show that night, great, it's successful in that aspect. If we are able to call that sequence of cues that, oh my gosh, I stress over this every night. If I can nail that section every night, that show's successful that night. When it's not successful is when it's an empty house every night and everybody's hating each other. Then
That's the easy one. That's the easy call.
But did you get every cue right?
No one in the audience noticed.
If a tree falls in the forest, Greg, come on.
So we're getting near the end of this thing, and I wanted to end with one other question, basically kind of off what Christina was saying really early on about the building the family thing, that feeling of creating a family, of a group of friends. As a stage manager, you walk a very thin line between, making friends and being the boss, because the stage manager is definitely the boss. I will say that. I never want to have a fight with the stage manager because I will lose. But how do you walk that line? How do you know how far to go? It's easy for the director. The director is definitely one step back. But I know when I started and directing, I didn't want that step back. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of that family. And it was a big lesson for me to be able to say, yeah, I can love these people like a family, but they're the group, and the stage manager is part of that group. But you're still the boss. So how did you do it? And I got to say, before you answer, one of the reasons I wanted you here is because you all do it really, really well. So what are your secrets?
Well, I took a stage management class a little while ago, and one of the key phrases that kind of we kept coming up with was ruling with an iron fist in a silk glove, where, you have that there all the time, but you're friendly and you're bubbly on the outside, and you can create this warm environment for the actors and then also for their characters. And I think one of the biggest things that I at least try to do is do that while also making sure that the actors are comfortable and then their characters are comfortable. So when we are there, they're their characters, and then I'm their stage manager. And then when we come out of it, they can easily be themselves and I can be myself. And so that kind of creates a different line where they're in rehearsal and I'm in rehearsal. But when we're out of rehearsal, we're just buds together and it works and it's fine. So just not creating a line, but making sure there is a known difference. That's kind of what works best for me, I guess.
I'm kind of on the same page with that. For me personally, it's like a little switch. When I show up at rehearsal, I'm there to do a job. You know what? Let's do the job. We'll do the rehearsal, clean up. But as soon as we're done and we're out of the building, great. Let's go have dinner. Let's go have drinks. But while I'm there, I am in that role.
Megan?
It's kind of a mom thing.
Yes.
Yes.
when I hang out
I
with
just
my
want to go on record saying Brian is the biggest mother I've ever met. All right, go ahead, Kara.
When I hang out with my 5-year-old niece and we're goofing around and, but then she needs something, time, or just kids in general, time and time again, people say, oh, you're going to be a great mom. I'll be like, no, I'm a great stage manager. And I feel it on repeat. You build that trust almost right out of the door, Sometimes I'll have a conversation of like, if something is going on in your personal life, please let me know. I want to be there for you, especially if it will affect the show, if you need that person to reach out to. But when we're in the theater, if I say, last night the director had you move stage left and you move stage right, you need to switch that. I just need you to do it because that's what I have unless I get corrected. And sometimes I'll say, I may not always say please, I may not always say thank you, but I do mean it. But then of course I always end up saying it. It's all about building trust and knowing that you're there for them, but you will correct them if they step out of line. But you'll do it nicely with an iron fist and a silk glove. Exactly. I love that. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, that's a great phrase.
Yeah, it ends up being very maternal because you know that even though you yell at them, they'll still give you a hug at the end of the night.
Yeah, it's very much for me, definitely, like Brian had said, like it's a role, and like my role, my job is to make sure everything works and that everyone is safe and that like we do things how we've rehearsed for a reason. And like I may seem like I'm trying to be hard ass or strict or whatever about like I need you to do this because X, Y, and Z. The reason is I'm really keeping everyone's safety and well-being and the good of the show in mind. And sometimes that means I have to tell you like, hey, this is what you were supposed to do. Like, be here instead of here. It's not just a capricious whim of power. If you're not there, then thing will hit you and you will get hurt, and it's from a very protective, mama bear is a good way to go with it, where it's like, I am here for you. I am here to support you and make your job as an actor be as easy as possible, using that term loosely because being an actor is not easy. But, and that may mean that I am there with, a hug and like, I'm here for you kind of a thing. And also maybe like I need to be firm and tell you, just get down to brass tacks, do what needs to be done because there's a job to do. So it's kind of sort of balancing that. And I'm definitely going to remember that iron fist silk glove because that really describes it well. And it's build a trust, but also let them know like when I get down to business and when I mean something, don't mess with me. Don't question it. Don't fight back with me. Like there's a reason why everyone has their job and is doing what they're doing. So.
Yeah, boundaries are super important.
Mm-hmm.
You and if it comes down to a choice, a lot of times, especially in rehearsal, you have to pick boss over friend.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I struggled it when I first started stage managing, and I've watched stage managers who just, if you get the wrong cast, they will just run all over you. And so the boundaries are super, super important. And also, it's essential that the director backs up the stage manager in the rehearsal process. Because if the cast sees that the director doesn't care about the stage manager, they won't either. And so that is so essential.
I've said often, well, I think I've talked with all of you before a rehearsal period starts and given the big speech of, disagree with me all you want, never in front of the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing. It's a two-way street. The director and the stage manager need to be a united front.
At least united in front of the actors.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Don't have to be the best of friends. You don't have to, particularly want to hang out, but in front of the actors, yeah, you need to recognize the importance of each role. Christina, did you have anything to add to this little?
Everyone's got like such great like ideas and like everything you say. I'm always like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it, because I can never always put into words what I'm thinking or how I've described it. But yeah, everything everyone said, I'm like, yes, exactly. And I look at it as like also like I'm very open and communicative with them. I'm like, look, like it was said, this is the job. This is what we're here for. I'm not doing this because I'm mean. I'm not doing this because I don't like you. I'm doing this because this is what we're here to do. And I let them know that up front. And I'm also like, but I still bring who I am all the time, every day to them. I'm like, because transparency is always important. Because if like, that's what I learned, at least at Starbucks, for me and my baristas. If my baristas feel like they can't trust me in some way, shape, or form, that I'm like hiding something, and like, I mean, we all have our own thing, but like, I'm very like, I'm there for you, but don't forget, this is what we're here to do, and laying it out.
Excellent. Well, time's up. I gotta say, number one, I said it over and over again. I will say it again. For those of you who have stage managed for me, I'm still trying to get Christina to stage manage for me one of these days. You're the best. I am under no delusion that I could ever do any of the shows that I have been able to do without your contributions.
Me?
You've been amazing, and it's so fun to see you all together. This is great. And I look forward to the time that we can work together again. That would be nice. As far as next week goes, I don't know. Next week will very probably be one of those free-for-all ask Greg a question, because I don't plan on having a guest next week, because next week, if things work right, I will be broadcasting from an RV in Provo, Utah.
Oh, wow.
So
That's where you're going.
that's
Okay.
where we're going. Well, no, we're not going. We're passing through Provo, Utah, but we'll be there on Sunday. We're going on a road trip to Yellowstone starting on Friday. So, but I plan on doing this somewhere in the middle of Mormonville. So, I will try to do it.
Mormonville is interesting. Matt and I listened to Book of Mormon while we were walking through the Mormon church. It was
There you go.
Blasphemous. It was
You were listening to it on your way through Mormon church. Wow. Okay. So, thank you again. I love you all. Take care of yourselves. Check. I will let people know if this is happening next week, but the plan is it will be. And come on back. Ask me questions. I'm open. And until then, take care. Be safe.
All right.
Stay healthy. I'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.